there's a gap in SvelteKit right now between the frontend and the backend typing. That's what SvelteKit Zero API solves. So I'm just going to jump straight into it and show you what it's all about. Here I have pretty much an example project. It's very empty, as you can see, but I have this API import up here. I can write API period, and I get this warehouse. If you look on the routes on the right, if you can see it, it says warehouse as a slug. So it expects some sort of parameter. Let's write Austin. And here I can write products as we expected over here, and it has an endpoint of post. This expects a body and a query. I can see that right here. So I'm going to open that up and I'm going to give it a body. It wants a message as a string, boink, and it wants a query. Now I'm including the query here, just an example. If I hover over here, you can see it needs a name and a stock. So I'm going to give it a name, a banana, and stock of 69 bananas. There we go. All right. So what we can do after here is we can make a period. And this is all of the responses you could expect from that endpoint. Now that looks like many, but there's actually only 3. There's the bad request, the continue, and the created. Everything else is just generalization. So let's say any. That would be any of all of the responses we could get. Client error would be just any 400 code. And the same with error would be either 400 or 500. Informational would be 100, and so on. You get the idea. Let's use created here. And I'm going to have a callback here. If I hover over this, I can see what I expect from this backend. I can get a message, a node, and a location. Let's console log that. So I'm going to do that right here. And I'm going to see if I have the dev server open. I do. So I can go over here and I can restart, and it says bad request. All right. So I could go here and say bad request, and then I could console log that. But imagine you're debugging, you have to do that everywhere, and that would be annoying. I'm going to go into my API here, which is where you have the options. I'm going to select this one called prevent callbacks, and I'm going to make this a callback error. So what this does is this is gonna prevent this type of callback that we have created over here. So every request. So every time there's an error, it will console log it for us. So I'm going to go like here and say console log. I'm going to make a 1 error. I'm going to write a res. There we go. So now I can see I get an error here. And in here, I see warehouse needs to be warehouse. So what that means in my giraffe language is I need to have some sort of a warehouse string here. And there you get a OK message. You have created this product, banana, with a stock of 69. All right, that's good and all. We also have the bad requests. If I make that here, you can see that that actually is going to throw some errors. So it has some error checking here, error handling, which is very neat and it's very useful. So let's just jump straight into the backend here. So this is what it looks like. In the beginning, you can see okay, so first of all, I have this interface. And this interface is just saying, what do we expect as an input? We expect the message, the name, and the stock from the query, right? Message from the body. So down here, I have this, I am using this type here, and I'm using post as a generic that type. And this type is playing well with SvelteKit. So what I mean when I say playing well is that we know we have the warehouse over here. If I write event params, it recognizes that. So that's what I mean. And then we have something called a query spread, which is something from SvelteKit Zero API. And this query spread is taking the queries, so the search parameters, and is trying to make it into an object. And then we can spread it. That's why it's called the query spread, because it's useful this way. So we have a name, which is a string, and the stock, which should be a number. And the query spread is trying to determine what it is. It's trying to format it into whatever it fits into. So here you can see if it's a number, it's trying to format it into a number. Booleans will be a true Boolean instead of a string, because queries will be strings naturally. And it will try to pass objects as well. Now, as you know, it might not be those types. So we need some sort of an error handler. That's where the SvelteKit Theory API error comes in, and error is just stands for error. So that's all. We make a new variable here called error response. If error handler gets some sort of a error, so that's one of these. If it returns an error, then we can return error response with whatever status code we want. So we want maybe a bad request would be very typical here. And that's what you saw before. If I hop over here, and I write bad request here. Oh, there you can see that it is typed, which is very neat. So in here you can see that I have something called an error require. Require just makes sure that these values exist. That's what it does. Type is trying to check if this key value pair here is a number. So if the value is a number. And match is trying to match each key value, so the value of each key, to whatever regex expression we have. So that's why it required the warehouse. And here's an error message. So that's very simple. We also have a fourth one, I think, which is test, which just tests any condition. And if the condition fails, then it will result in an error. So maybe the stock needs to be higher than 2. If not, then we say stock needs to be more than 2, for instance, right? And then you can see I return continue here. So here I'm just like simulating a database where you save it and then you return the objects. And then I make it down here and then I create the object, and yeah, you kind of get the idea here. So that's really what SvelteKit Theory API is about. And it's generating these types for us, so we don't have to worry about like all of the minor details. So yeah,